before we get started, I thought maybe you could each give us a brief background of your career experience. Jon, if you would like to start. I think you might be on mute, Jon. No, unfortunately, we still can't hear you. No, we still can't hear you. Jon, if maybe you want to try to leave the stage and rejoin, and in the meantime, maybe Amol, you can give us a brief background of your career experience?
Absolutely, Amanda. I hope you can hear me okay.
Absolutely.
And good morning to everybody on the call here. First, I want to thank SAE for giving us a chance today to share more about the book and what we have achieved through the context of the book. My background is I've been in the automotive and commercial vehicle industry for 18 plus years, launching some exciting new products for North America. I started my journey with Ford Motor Company in Detroit, traveled down south to Pennsylvania to work for Mack Trucks, and then to Greensboro, North Carolina, to work for Volvo Trucks. During that journey, I have worked on products ranging from new suspension to engineering new cab, mechatronics concepts, and also working with SAE standards on how do we integrate those into our product development cycle. I'm excited to be with the team here today to answer any questions and talk more about how we have come so far on the book.
Great, thank you, Amol. Jon, let's see if you're, no, we still can't unfortunately hear you. Sounds like it was
working earlier. We ran a test.
Oh, okay. It's working now. We can hear you.
Okay. Hallelujah. Okay, I'm Jon Quigley. I've been in automotive industry probably nearly 30 years, and you can tell by all this blonde in my beard. I started out as an industrial engineer doing embedded controls for industrial applications and moved to a company called VES that was a skunk works company for class heavy vehicle, commercial vehicle, and moved on to a tier one supplier to the automotive at a time when tire pressure monitoring systems were under development. So I was fortunate to be a part of work on some cool platforms. I worked on the Prowler, the C5, Corvette, Viper. I have models of them around here someplace because they're cool. And I moved on to work at PACCAR when we were introducing tire pressure monitoring systems into those commercial vehicles for them. I worked for PACCAR for a while and Volvo for a very long while. I seeded 7 patents and I've written more than 10 books on product development topics. This is the thing that motivates me, is always curious about something, related to product development. It's not enough to be a good engineer. It's not enough to be a good project manager. It's not enough to be a good business person to define the business case. It's a lot of things that are required to get this stuff right.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I thought maybe we would start with just kind of what inspired you both to delve into the world of product development, and then what motivated you to take on the challenge of writing a book on modernizing product development processes.
Well, in fairness, this was Amol's idea. He said something like this would be interesting to write, and I agreed with that. I thought, well, this could be fun, and also the emerging technology, or the speed at which technology is emerging, and the things that we have available to us to learn fast, because that's essentially what product development is. You're trying to learn as quickly as possible about the thing that you're trying to do. That ranges from the customer's need, how to fulfill that in a good way, a cost-effective and sustainable way, and all the way through how do I document the requirements on things, which of these things are really important and should be part of the product, and which are maybe less so, and to reduce the risk, we need to maybe eliminate those. So, like I was saying earlier, this is all of these. It's not just about being a good engineer, and it's not just about the processes. It's the products, the processes. It's what you know to make things, to get where you need to go.
Okay, great. Amol, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, like John said, the intent was to find ways to help the industry integrate the rapidly transition of new technologies, whether it's battery electrification, whether it's software-defined vehicles, you name it, it's out there. And every industry, every OEM, whether it's suppliers, manufacturers, they are all leading this race. And to achieve that, we cannot use or rely on the existing development cycles. They are designed for current products or products which we have used in the past. So that was the motivation, is how do we help the industry to accelerate this development and get the right solution to the end customer with the right quality, not just because I want to be first in the race, but also make sure the end product makes sense. So that was a big motivation for me to connect with John. The other thing was during COVID-19, we both felt like there was a shift in the mindset of people, that some individuals wanted to try coming from non-engineering to engineering backgrounds, or transitioning from engineering to, say, automotive or other domains. We felt like there is a gap today where employees or students don't really have an opportunity to connect between what they know today, from whether it's academia or whether it's current processes, to how they can do better in the future.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So as you kind of just briefly touched on, the title does suggest going beyond just engineering requirements. So can you elaborate on the broader perspective that you bring to modernization, specifically the processes with product development that your book addresses, and why they're so crucial in today's landscape?
I'll give you an example. We talk about, for example, AI. That's an emerging thing that maybe could help you. And I'll give you an example of where it did. I was doing some consulting with a private equity firm who was purchasing a company, and they were looking to reduce the cost. Now, the company they had talked to was a procurement house, and they were trying to figure out how to reduce the cost of the consumable material in making the product. And they were all focused on this consumable material. And I went over to AI, and I put a bunch of queries in on this particular industry, looking for alternative or substitute material to accomplish the same thing with less cost, no mining and things like that, and just to figure out what might be possible. And it yielded, it was productive. It yielded, there's some acrylics that are a really good substitute for this material, and there are apparently people already doing it. So there's an example right there in your product development process, how AI can help you figure out some things. Virtual and augmented reality, when you're trying to figure out what design is the best solution, prototyping, you still have to go through prototyping and build a thing. But if you can mock the thing up with virtual or augmented reality in some way, then you can start to learn about the product, the interface with the customer and the product. Models in general have been doing this for a very long time, only it's less physical. And with these tools, you start introducing the ability to explore the actual product before you even have a thing in your hand, or have put a lot of investment in tooling money to produce prototype parts. Speed is a big thing in product development, learning quickly. That's the agile mantra, fail fast. In other words, pick something, and if it doesn't work, move on, learn from that and move on quickly. So these are some of the tools that can help when it comes to the product development, streamlining your product development. It's about learning quickly.
Yeah, to add to that, the modern tools, the softwares, the computing power has been faster than it used to be in the older days. So the best way is how can we harness that information? How can we harness the opportunity to integrate those tools, the capability of those tools into our modernized product development cycle? That's what we define in the book. We create a stage gate approach where you do verification in the early stages, you define your requirements, and you use these tools that John mentioned, whether it's virtual reality, augmented reality, AI based tools based on what you have in a portfolio, and create early concepts which can be verified either through a technology readiness level checklist or through some sort of assessment which gives you high confidence before you start investing uh, into further development of the product. So I think that's been a big change for us when we define how modernization of product development helps to bring product faster.
Great, thank you. So you kind of both answered my next two questions that I was going to ask you. So I'll just move on because you discussed the use of new tools and the concept of just improving just the overall development process and testing and stuff. So my next question is, there is a notable focus on addressing the gaps in today's developmental process. Can you elaborate on the significance of this and how this is covered in your book?
Well, many of those gaps are the belief that we know a thing to be true, and we hold that with some degree of certainty. And then invariably, not invariable, but many times we find out after we've put a lot on top of this knowing or this knowledge, we find out later that that wasn't exactly correct. In fact, it was exactly wrong. In this situation, it might have been correct in others. So that's part of the gap, and that's part of the speed, the speed thing we're talking about. You think you know something from your past development of a product or a particular technology, but now you're looking at a new technology in a different pace with different people or different contributors across the globe. So those rules that you had that you were fairly certain applied may not exactly apply here. So that's part of it. Then you have the marketing demand. Anybody that's developed a product understands that time to market is the big deal. They felt the pressure of the marketing people breathing down their neck. We need to get this out for a particular show. That's a pretty big gap. That the time alone is a pretty big gap. And the tools we're talking about here are ways and mechanisms to help close that out a little bit.
Yeah, if you think about how the industrial revolution influenced the automotive industry, probably over 100 years ago, right? We built cars, we created the assembly line concept through Ford Motor Company's leadership. That changed the entire way of looking at things and doing product development or industrialization of products. Now we are into a similar era where we know how to do it, but now we need to evolve to start smartly integrating, whether it's software, whether it's electronic control units, whether it's new displays, technologies which are designed or centric so that we are more comfortable driving a product or a vehicle with safety as number one. So those are some of the gaps we noticed where we know how to do it, but now we need to figure out how to integrate this smarter technologies in a more systematic and modern way. One example I'll give you is when we define requirements or when we reach out to our customers, we know what they know, but we can educate them saying we can do this better. We know what we see in the future. That information the customer would appreciate and give you more insight on how they can see the future more applicable to their applications. That's what we're looking at. To harness that creativity, harness that technology, which we are evolving faster.
But if I may interject, but that requires a different relationship with our supplier, one that goes well beyond what has been typical in the automotive. I need it to be this low cost, and every year we're going to actually take anywhere from 3 to 6% out of the cost in some magic way, which is okay maybe up front, but after a while that's less possible. I would like to also add, if I may, the role of platform management. I was actually surprised at how little of that existed at in the automotive industry at earlier on. And then how the pendulum swung back so far. So if you remember the General Motors days, where the Blazer and the Bronco were essentially the same vehicle with a badge put on it different, that's not really platform management. That's some kind of marketing thing. So somewhere between those two extremes, and reuse of sub-assemblies in a good way, and software can make that more effective and efficient. Allowing you to reuse the hardware, that saves on some development time, that saves on material costs, that can save on quality issues as well, assuming you got the product right the first time.
Great, thank you. So you both have very extensive experience in your respective industries. What are some of the key learnings from your experiences that you aim to capture in the book?
Wow, I think the big one is don't think that you think you know it, because you probably don't. I'm amazed how often we move through with rose-colored glasses, you know, kind of like on autopilot. This looks like that, therefore it must be that. That's not always true. And then the second thing is the role of people in that lateral thinking. This is an important thing. It's the technology is the technology, but thinking differently about the technology and the application, those things are even more interesting than the technology itself, even though you're going to have to come to grips with the technology. So we're only as good as the learning in our team and how that's distributed, and that's kind of an important thing. And the controls we exert over that learning, as in documenting it in a way that we can retrieve that information and say the results of these explorations were with some validity or veracity to them, rather than a guesswork or a supposition on what the outcome looks like. Something like the design of experiments, but not like that. So those were probably pretty key for me.
Yeah, the way I look at it is you got to think outside the box. You have to emphasize to find ideas, opportunities very early in the stage of the development cycle. You got to be open about it. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your coworkers. And in that process, what's going to happen is you are going to identify risk. You know, sometimes we may create an idea which is a fiction, but if you start digging in more, you'll see that, okay, I can do this, but with this risk. And then you start putting a mitigation strategies around it. So those are some of the learnings we have put in the book to help our readers overcome those challenges. We have also emphasized the mindset of reverse engineering. You know what the end product needs to be. Focus on what can you do in different stages to get to that endpoint. I think that will help you develop a much more robust product than just following a standard process defined in your organization. Work on the product and not the process.
That's great. Thank you.
And for me, it's a tightrope walk between a measure of discipline and chaos. You know, like Amol said, you do need some kind of structure around the work. But if you structuralize, if that's a word, if you put too much structure in place, then you impede the lateral thinking and the ability to think about how things can be done differently. One of the failures that I've seen in many cases, no matter how good the product development organization is we settle in on a solution pretty quickly, and that solution has been maybe optimized around one particular variable, without looking at the entirety or the range of possible solutions.
Absolutely. Okay. Were there any particular challenges that you encountered during writing and researching for this particular book?
It was during lockdown, so there was some difficulty with that for me. Trying to remain motivated and sane when you were essentially relegated to your house for most of the time. That was a little bit rough, but maybe that's my close touch or very distant touch with sanity. But for the most part, the collaboration was really good. I like working with Amol. SAE provides access to the database so we can do a lot of research on things. That's always makes things easier. And for me, every book I write is a I think I know something, but I'm sure that I don't know enough. And then I go do research and I do experiments, and then all that goes into a book. So it's part of a continuous self-improvement.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I think finding the right time during COVID-19 obviously was a challenge. One of the biggest tasks we took on ourselves is to make sure we find good examples for our readers, examples where they can connect, they can believe in it, and they can learn from it. That's where we got excellent help from SAE to work towards better visuals, better examples, and then capture that in the book. Yeah. Another piece of the challenge we had was during the end stages of the book, when we had to proofread all those 200+ pages. Every time you go back, you're always looking at, oh, I could have done this differently. I could have rewritten this differently. That could be a daunting task. So I think proofreading at the very end is a challenge. You've got to give enough time to make sure that the content is very foolproof and doesn't create that ambiguity of, okay, I could have done it differently.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
We're engineers at heart, and an engineer just keeps tinkering with it. It would never see the light of day if we acted like engineers.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do you plan on reaching a broader audience with your book? Are there any specific strategies or platforms that you would like to see leveraged just to have a bigger audience in general?
Well, I write a column at a few magazines that are relevant to this. And so I have introduced it in some of those columns, some of the concepts in some of those columns, especially around the manufacturing part, and some project management stuff as well. But I don't know if we've done anything more than that other than reach out to technical schools and community colleges or colleges and universities to see if they're interested in having us guest lecture to kind of explain some of this. Because for me, you get out of school with an engineering degree, you're really probably competent as an engineer. You may even be really, really good as an engineer mathematically, but an engineer is more than mathematics, and that takes a lot more than an engineer, as we said at the very beginning of this thing, to get this thing to the right place at the right time for the right cost.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out what are the different sources we can pursue to further promote the book, further reach out to more readers, whether it's through academia or industry professionals who are trying to switch careers or trying to learn more on what they know today. We'll continue finding ways to reach out. We're going to use social media like LinkedIn, other stuff, and just to see what else can we pursue.
I forgot, Amol, if I could. We were talking about SAE, a class at SAE based on the book. We're working through that right now.
Yeah, there is an effort right now to investigate how we can pursue this as a full course to students or SAE members. That work is ongoing right now.
Right.
That's great. And it has such a broad approach to it where it can be applied to any type of developmental processes, product development. So it's not really just specific for one particular industry. It can be applied in a very general way. So that's fantastic.
Right.
Okay.
It's a product development book, not an automotive specific product development. There are lots of pictures of vehicles in there, though.
But it's not specific just to the automotive industry.
No, it's not.
Great, absolutely. Okay, and then just as far as an application in education, how would you like to see students learning and applying the very basic concepts of the book in their professional careers?
I would start with, for me, the beginning of this has to start with curiosity. Curiosity in the application of a technology, curiosity in the technology itself. Curiosity is in, I don't think I know all about that, and probably will never know all about that, but I'm curious enough to want to know more about this thing and how it fits with what I'm doing, even if it's distal to what I'm doing, as in distant from what I'm doing. Those things are pretty important. You get out with an engineering degree, you think you're done. That's really not how it works, or it will work like that for maybe 5 years, and then you're going to start dating yourself with the advancement of technology. You're not going to be able to do some things. And so for me, while this book talks about these new tools, the big thing is staying curious and always wanting to learn more about your craft, even if it's not immediately related to your craft.
Yeah, I would say the students, especially the SAE members, can use this book as a guiding tool to apply to, say, SAE Baja competitions or Formula SAE, to build that updates of product in those stages the book mentions about. I think it would be an excellent way for them to apply those principles, and then once they move into the professional world, they can be in a better position to correlate that information and be more successful in the professional experience, rather than just coming out of college or school and then just trying to find a new job, struggling for the initial few months. This would be an excellent way to adapt to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure formal education teaches an engineer more than just the engineering of the mathematics. Even my kid just graduated, and what I see is very limited understanding of the very beginning to the very end of the product development. That's very helpful if you're an engineer, because you're making decisions. No matter who you are, it's going to be very helpful if you're working in product development. But if you're an engineer, you're making decisions, trade-off decisions. And if you don't understand the consequences at one end of a decision, it's like an airplane, a pilot. You make a very small mistake at the very beginning of your path. That little degree, 1 or 2 degrees off, is the difference between landing in Greenland or flying over the Arctic Circle, perhaps, depending on where you start.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're kind of getting to the end here. Can you provide possibly a sneak peek into your next project? What readers can maybe expect from any upcoming work? Before I have you answer that, I do have to say that, Jon, I see your books up on your shelf behind you. You will be adding a new one to that collection very soon, because your SAE International's Dictionary of Testing, Verification, and Validation, that is authored by you, Jon Quigley, just released on October 30th. So the print book should be available very soon. We'll be able to add that to your bookshelf behind you.
Yes, and that's where it's going to go, right up there.
Fantastic. So any other future projects that you would like to discuss? Or
yeah, I have a risk management book going into production, and right now we're going through the galleys. So, you know, production must be imminent. I think it's somewhere between January or February. It's a project risk management book. So then that'll be 2 books. Actually, there's 2 books out this year: that Modernizing the Product Development Process and the Test and Verification. That's 2 books in 1 year.
That's huge.
I'm sorry. a little adrenaline rush.
That feels relieved.
Yes, it does. After the to get it out the door, and then the risk book. It is too bad I couldn't squeeze that in this year too, because that would have been really cool. 3 in 1 year. I've done 2 in 1 year before with Kim Priest, and that was pretty exhilarating, and as you can imagine, a little bit stressful. but this was 2 and almost 3. This was mostly exhilarating and stressful to the end. I encourage anybody who thinks about writing a book to look up a quote by Winston Churchill. I would say it here, but I can't really, I'm not going to remember it entirely accurately, but it's, if you look up Winston Churchill quote on writing a book, he will describe the phases of what it's like. It's excitement at the beginning and it's not so much at the end. That's the really thing worth noting.
Yes, well, hopefully it's all worth it when you receive the print book. So
yeah, that's the
1 year is extremely impressive. So
that's the thing that I think is cool when I see that when I have it in my hand. I'm like, oh man, this is awesome.
Absolutely.
And y'all make us look good for sure. SAE did a lot of work to make this thing look nice.
Yeah, I would say without SAE, this would have been a daunting task. So we really appreciate Amanda, your support.
Oh,
Sherry's support has been just fantastic.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Very grateful for that for sure.
Okay, did you have any final comments before we handed it back over to Shane?
I was going to mention too, if you guys do have a couple more minutes, we have a few minutes before we have the closing remarks, but it does look like we have some questions from the chat. So if you guys have a couple more minutes, I would just go ahead and read them off, and then
sure,
you and John can go ahead and take turns answering. So looks like from Shashan, we have what difference have you observed in software development versus mechanical component development and automobile product development? So that's a mouthful. It is on the right-hand side there if it is easier to read for you guys.
Yeah, well, for me, mechanical component development, the rules that apply to that are based on a certain time. For example, it takes a little more time to create a mechanical part as a prototype part than it does for a snippet of code, maybe. So that kind of, at least that belief, kind of sets the stage for some of the actions that are depending. People, if you can't, these things aren't exactly equal, so the rules that apply for one don't exactly apply to the other. Although with the advancement of simulation, the software and modeling, the software is, as Amol said earlier, the software ability to model that and test some of those features is getting comparable to the mechanical vibrations and things like that that you can subject a model to.
Great. Amol, do you have anything you wanted to add to John's answer?
Yeah, there is a significant difference between the mechanical side and the software side. The mechanical side is more stable in the industry. There is a standardized way of working things. The software integration is where things are getting a bit complicated. And that's where we're trying to bridge that gap on how do we bring those two together in a more smarter way.
Great. So then it looks like from Mark, we have, how do engineers keep an open mind to change intact when using development tools such as voice of the customer, house of quality, etc.?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. For me, it might be less about the actual voice of customer as it is about the parts associated with that around the organization. We have to realize the customer probably knows what problem they have very intimately. They're not necessarily going to know so much about a solution until it's in their hand in some way. There's where virtual reality and augmented reality can maybe explore some alternatives before you start putting details together into requirements. By change attack, I'm assuming that we think one set of things, and when we're first talk to the customer, but as we talk more to the customer, it looks like things are changing from that original discussion. But they may not be changing from that original discussion, and they could be. The customer may have learned more about it, so they're able to better articulate what they're actually wanting, which looks like a change to us. The other thing is, when you're working with a customer, coming up with a common lexicon, a set of words that when I say it, you know exactly when you or I say it, we know exactly what we're talking about, is pretty important. It amazes me how often we don't challenge those, not really challenge, but at least work to understand when somebody says something that we actually know what they mean by that.
Yeah, one way to it's a great question. I appreciate that, Mark. One way to tackle that is treat the customer as a partner. Even our suppliers are partners. That's how I look at it. That way we know what we know and what the suppliers or our customers know, and then that partnership can help bridge those challenges. And that's where an open mind approach can help you, is because you're sharing information in a more transparent way to your partners than just treating them as a supplier, as in this case, where you're telling them what to do. So I think that could be one way to address this.
Great. Thank you, guys. And then looks like one more to follow up from Jason. He asked if you could please restate which PM risk book is coming out and when.
Okay, it's a CRC Press book. I'm scurrying right now to find the title. I think oh man, I'm having a hard time remembering the title. It's through CRC Press. It's like how to. You would think, after all my time with the book, that I would just be able to remember the title, but I'm struggling with it. It's like managing tomorrow's threats today. I believe that's actually it. Risk management, managing tomorrow's threats today.
Great. Well,
I was trying to look for it, but I can't find it in time. So
no worries. Yes, that's all the questions from the chat. I wanted to thank you too, and Amanda, for conducting the guest speaker portion. Thank you guys for volunteering your time to be with us today, getting a little deeper dive into your book. I look forward to when the course releases and helping promote that to the young engineers and other professionals that might be interested. With that being said, did you guys have any last minute closing comments you wanted to make before we get to the closing remarks?
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody that was involved in making this happen and all the attendees for sure. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, connect with me on LinkedIn and send me some messages about what you want to talk about. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, same here. Thank you all for joining us and asking good questions, listening to us. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Shane. And connect us on LinkedIn. We're happy to talk more and share more insight. And hopefully we'll get back to you soon when the course is mature and ready.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jon and Amol, for being here today. Thank you for your time.